Okay, everyone, it is 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Welcome to Bridging the Gap and Working Together, our intentional programming for youth and teens, and the continuation of your ProCon experience for those of us who joined us at the pre-session last week. I hope you were able to tune in for the JCC Movement Moment earlier this afternoon to kick off the conference. But if not, please know you'll be able to access this session on Spot Me in the coming days. My name is Yael Warwick, and I'm the Professional Development Manager at JCC Association. And for the purpose of this conference, also a very appreciative steward of the youth and teen peer community. So as we get started, I want to share a few quick notes. The session is being recorded. We understand that some people don't wish to be recorded, in which case feel free to turn off your camera. If this is not the session you intended to join, don't panic. Feel free to return to Spot Me and select a different session. Or if we've piqued your interest or my energy is just palpable, feel free to hang around for the remainder of the session and see what youth and teen programming is all about. Joining me today from JCC Association is Rabbi Tracy Kaplowitz, Director of Operations at JWB Jewish Chaplains Council. Throughout the entirety of the session, our names will appear as hosts or co-hosts at the top of the participant list, so you can chat with us to address any of your needs or questions. We aspire for every person to feel like they belong at ProCon 2021 and are working to build inclusive spaces in which all people feel welcome, respected, safe, and fully included. To that end, we encourage you to consider the following suggestions as we begin our time together. We invite you to rename yourself in Zoom with your name, first and last, agency, and if you're comfortable, add your personal pronouns. As you can see, we've also enabled closed captioning, which will appear at the bottom of your screen, and you do have the option to turn it off using the button on the bottom of your toolbar if you wish to do so. We are thrilled to offer this multifaceted conference at no cost to our JCCs, which was made possible because of our very generous ProCon 2021 sponsors. Each sponsor with us believes in the JCC movement and the incredible work JCCs accomplish day in and day out. Their representatives are proud to be with us to share their expertise and offerings. So we hope that you'll join us in showing appreciation for their support by visiting their booths in our virtual vendor hall. We also encourage you to connect with them anytime during ProCon 2021 and beyond. During the conference, you can use the chat feature to connect with them or any of the conference attendees. And after the conference, feel free to reach out using the contact information as listed. So for those of you who are joining us again from the pre-session on April 20th, welcome back, and it's very good to see you. And for those of you diving into the conversation now, welcome. In our pre-session, the Jewish Education Project joined us to set the stage of learning and better understand the landscape of youth and teens today. All of you do such incredibly important work, and it's clear now more than ever that our families need the support and programming that JCCs have to offer. So in today's session, we'll have the opportunity to hear from a number of our colleagues about the why, what, and how of intentional programming for youth and teens. Catalyzed by their conversation and the questions that may arise out of this 30-minute panel, we'll send you into the breakout rooms where you can continue to discuss how we can be more intentional in engaging our youth and teen members, what programming you found to be successful, and how we can collaborate more effectively between departments at our JCCs to successfully create programming for the lifespan of our members. So I want to acknowledge that many of you may have joined us for our JCC Movement Moment and have been staring at the screen for at least an hour. So before we do get started, let's take a moment to stretch a bit, have a sip of water, and we're going to do a quick getting to know each other activity. It's a less traditional icebreaker. So, all right. So first of all, take a stretch. I really mean it. Wherever you are, stretch it out, take a sip of water. Movement is very important, everyone. You'll hear me talk about the mindful motivator at the end of the session. Okay, now go to your video settings at the bottom of your camera and click on Hide Non-Video Participants. Does everyone see where that is? So there should be an upward caret. Go to Video Settings under Stop Video. And there's an option, if you scroll down a little, it says hide non-video participants. Can I get a thumbs up or thumbs down if everyone sees this? Thumbs up, perfect. Okay, great. Now everyone turn off your camera. So I'm going to start by asking a few questions. And if the answer to my questions is yes, I want you to turn on your camera. If it's no, keep your camera off. First question, I started my day with a cup of coffee. If the answer is yes, turn on your camera. All right, we have some coffee drinkers. I'm here for you. All right, everyone, camera off. Just hit stop video. Yeah, perfect. I've worked out today. If the answer is yes, turn on your camera. Okay, we have some go-getters. I respect that. Okay, we can turn off your camera. I got at least 8 hours of sleep last night. If the answer is yes, turn on your camera. That is incredible and I admire you. Turn off your cameras. This is my first pro-con. If the answer is yes, turn on your camera. Amazing. It is so good to have you here, and we are so grateful that you've taken the time to connect with us. All right, turn off your camera. My last question. I'm a youth and teen professional at a JCC, and I'm super excited to dive into today's topic. I should see 74 faces. Okay, wonderful. All right, so we're refreshed. Let's dive in. To start the conversation, I'd like to welcome Chris Herman, the Teen Division Director at the JCC of Greater Pittsburgh, who will share a bit about why we're here and how we arrived at this topic. Chris, take it away.
Thanks, Yael. It's great to be here with all of you. My name is Chris Herman. I am the Teen Division Director at the JCC of Greater Pittsburgh. In this role, I engage primarily 8th grade through 12th grade in intentional Jewish experiences. A few years ago at our JCC annual meeting, our outgoing chair of the board was giving his remarks and reflecting on his time as a chair. In his address, he recalled his time growing up at the JCC as a middle school and high school teen going to camp, playing basketball after school and hanging out with his friends at the JCC. It's no surprise that the outcome of him having such a positive Jewish experience as growing up as a youth led him to take on a leadership role at the JCC, because we all know the impact that we can have in working with youth and teens. But his remarks stuck with me even years later. For a long time now, I have felt, and I have shared this with people that I work with, that I am not in the business of creating Jewish programs for teens, but rather I'm in the business of creating meaningful experiences that create powerfully positive memories that shape identity. I'm a Jewish identity architect, and I don't take that responsibility lightly. Hearing the remarks of the board chair provided the affirmation I needed, but also pushed me to think about how I can use these remarks with my colleagues at the JCC in Pittsburgh, so that they would see themselves as more than just a camp director or a basketball coach or director, but they are all Jewish identity architects, working on behalf of the youth and teens in our community. How can I work with my colleagues to put the youth and teens at the center of the decision-making process rather than job security or how much revenue are we bringing, how many people are we engaging? How can I work with my colleagues to change the language that we use when we talk about teen engagement so that we can fully grasp this great responsibility that we have? And finally, how can we break down the silos or the swim lanes or whatever you want to call it, that each of our departments are constricted into work so that we can work more collaboratively together in the engagement space to provide seamless transition from one experience to the other? A lot of questions came up for me, not a lot of answers, but in this session, we're going to explore these questions and we're going to come up with answers and probably a lot more questions than we came in with. Regardless of what department you work in or what role you play, I want us all to recognize that we are change makers in our organizations, that we have the ability to change the trajectory of youth and teen engagement in our community and work on behalf of the youth and teens. And I'm really, really excited to learn with you and go through this experience with you and with my colleagues that are sitting on the panel with me. So let's jump in.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I just want to, in advance of this panel, really give a kudos to Chris, who is the, I would say, creative engine behind the construction of this session. So thank you very much, Chris. Okay, so today, let's welcome to the stage of the why, what, and how of intentional programming for youth and teens. First, we have Robbie Etzkin, who is the Senior Director of Camp Marcelin at the Jewish Federation of Sarasota Manatee. We have Paul Frischman, the CEO of Miami Beach JCC, and Elise Robinson, the producer and director of the J Performance Arts Space at the Aaron Family JCC of Dallas. Let's get Elise on the screen. One moment. All right, welcome. Okay, so we're grateful to have each of you joining us today. For the next 30 minutes, I'd like to ask everyone to lean into the conversation. And if you have questions for our panelists, please save them for the end, where we've left a little time for Q&A. So as we engage in the panel, know that I'm going to be asking questions maybe directly to one person or another, but for the four of you on screen, absolutely feel free to chime in and reflect back to each other. Like having a conversation. We've all done it once or twice. I think we can do it on Zoom. All right, so first of all, Paul, I want to ask you as a CEO, what are JCCs looking for with our youth and teen programming, and what should programmers know?
Gotcha. Thank you, Yael, and also thank you, Tracy, from our JCCA, and my panelists, Robbie and Elise and Chris. It's been a great experience working with you to organize this. I think, first of all, it was nice to be included because I know you needed a senior perspective. And I certainly have been in the field something like 35 years. So I think I represent the older perspective, but also coming from a CEO. And what we talk about on really the leadership and the top leadership level at the JCCs is to try and be a center of excellence. And what does that really mean? It's center of excellence. And to me, it always comes down to a matter of perhaps maybe 4 or 5 strategic things. One of them is to have quality staff, volunteers, and leadership. Another is to have value, create value to our membership, to be listening and responding, to have quality customer service, certainly to work on partnerships. But going back to that value added piece of the equation, I think that really answers your question, Yael, because the value and the connection and the engagement opportunities that we have at a JCC through the children's and teen and youth department is really the bread and butter of most JCCs. The services that we provide, summer camps and the enrichments and the children's program and aquatics and sports, those are really the foundations of why most people join centers. And I think it is ultimately vital to all of our organizations and to all of you youth and teen workers that are out there. You really are the backbone of your agency. And I hope you feel that, and I hope you are appreciated for the work that you do, because it's so very important.
Paul, thank you so much. And I think that it's especially top of mind after hearing Gali and Alana speak so beautifully about leadership at all levels. As programmers, it sounds like from your perspective, we're really change agents and able to affect the level of excellence that both we experience as JCC professionals and our communities experience.
Yeah, Yael, I think that's well said. The other thing that I was very taken by in the opening presentation by Duran, he talked about impact. And if you really think about the impact that most JCCs are making now, I think it starts with this department right here. Children and family services. I mean, we are the ones that are out there really making impressions and making that community impact. So very important. And thank you to everybody who's doing this job right now. It is so very important.
Robbie, I know you're building a camp kind of from the ground up. So have you given this any thought in terms of the programming you're looking for?
Yeah, I think when I think about what's important to youth and teen program offerings, certainly a summer camp is, to me, the most important structure because of the unique environment it's able to provide and the impact it can have on children and teens, and not to forget the young adult staff or adults of any age that are working at a summer camp as well. And the impact that we talk about, whether it's strengthening Jewish identity, whether it's building resiliency within youth and with teens, There's so many things that you can do within the summer camp structure. And so I have the very fortunate opportunity with an amazing community in Sarasota to build this from scratch. And so it's not just the structures that one might think of when building from scratch, but it's the program curriculum. And what does that look like? What are the outcomes that we're trying to create? Because at the end of the day, when we're talking about the value that we bring to a community, how amazing is it that most of JCC preschools can say, when our kids go to kindergarten, they are so kindergarten ready, right? And you've got typical statistics. The kids that come from the JCC are so much more successful in kindergarten. I believe the same approach can be taken for summer camp with the different grade levels as well, because of the experiences they can have in that unique environment.
I think that's such a unique point to put on it in terms of looking at our goals and working backwards from there. Thanks for that. All right, so Chris, from planning leading up to this session, it's clear that you're very passionate about this topic. So why is intentional engagement important, specifically for youth and teens, and why do we want a program for the whole family?
Thanks, Yael. So yeah, I'm definitely passionate about this. I've dedicated my adult life to it, so I like it to mean something. But in my opening remarks, I said I am a Jewish identity architect, and if we're going to be architects, then we need to build like architects. A number of years ago, when I was putting my master thesis together, I read this book called The Spirituality of Welcoming by Ron Wolfson. And in the book, Ron talks about, how that we need to be intentional and that Jewish organizations are failing because they're not using that intention, right? He claims that to be successful, every single part of the user's experience needs to be intentional. The colors that you use on your wall, how you greet customers, where you let them park, right? All needs to be incredibly intentional so that they have a positive experience. And that has stuck with me a decade later because, I have been a user of many Jewish experiences and have felt disappointed in wanting more from so many of them. And I would hate for a youth or teen to be disappointed in the experience that we have provided them. So being intentional allows me to be in better control of the experience that I'm creating for the teens, to have better control of the outcome, to understand and navigate where it's going, all of those different pieces. And it's interesting, I looked up like what are the design principles that architects actually use, and I found that this quote, in architecture, the principles of design work together to create something that is aesthetically pleasing and optimizes the user's experience. And that's exactly what we are in the business of doing, right? If we can create those meaningful and intentional experiences early in their life and continue building on that year after year, we have the opportunity to connect the child and their family to so much more of what the JCC has to offer. We can take them on a journey from birth to death at the JCC. And many of us, we have these robust early childhood centers that are amazing. And as Robbie mentioned, like they prepare these kids for elementary school better than most early childhood centers. But and I agree with Robbie, camp is an amazing experience that does build resiliency, does inform Jewish identity. But if we can create experiences year long so that Robbie can stay in touch with his campers, with his families all year round, it just gives us the opportunity to create more meaningful relationships, build deeper connection, and create those authentic Jewish identities that we want these families to walk away from our experiences with.
I love that you draw from seemingly disparate areas of competency and expertise like architecture. And it makes me think, in a JCC professional's life, our career paths are not so linear. And that could be an entirely different Zoom session for all of us to talk about, how do we draw from the other areas of our life? So thank you for reminding us that it's not always the obvious that makes the best programming and makes the best professional. All right, so no doubt that this past year is unique in many ways. It's been challenging. It has stretched us to the brink. It has made us, I think, evolve in ways we couldn't have imagined or planned for. So, Elise, I want to use your voice for this one. How has the past year reshaped the way you program for community, and how do you think that impact has either differed or stayed the same? Although I don't know that anything has stayed the same. So, go ahead.
So I think, we really had to base programming on what our communities needed, not versus what we wanted. And I believe really make it very about the experience. Right now, we really needed to create programming that allowed children a place that they felt safe, a place where they could connect, place where they felt a sense of normalcy, and a place where we could really help build their confidence again. So I think that coming from an experience and then using whatever our department's specialty is as the vehicle to get there in order to help them rise and feel comfortable was extremely important. In addition to being really mindful that everyone had a different level of safety. And so we needed to create programming that was tiered. Some felt comfortable with in-person, and not by the exclusion to only offer in-person, to make sure that you had some virtual programming too, so that there was something for everyone, so that we didn't leave anyone out in a time of need. And I feel like we were really looking to be an opportunity where we could really be this home away from home in a way like never before. So I really think just like going through a different lens and making everything very experiential, and also keeping in mind that the well-being of our children are in crisis, and how can we be here for them and our families are experiencing crisis too. There's been so much change, and how can we be a constant in their life? So.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
Building on that, and for anyone to chime in here, we talk a lot about the past year, but it's still present with us. COVID is still here. I know many JCC professionals, like all of you, have been in the day in and day out since maybe last April. So how is your thought process on how this is evolving? Is the intentionality that Chris brought up and with the safety? How do we bring that into the ongoing programming that's happening as we think towards a future, which no one has a crystal ball. So how do we do that?
Let me attack that first, because I think as an agency, what certainly our JCC, and I think most JCCs were most involved in is this pivot motion. What Elise was just saying, how do you serve the population a little bit differently now, but still in a meaningful and intentional way, as Chris would use the words. And to me, the word that came out was trust, because I think the fact that we were all frontline workers, many of us, our doors were open immediately. We were looking for ways to service the community. Certainly children and teens, allowed families to get back to work, allowed many families the respite that they needed. And we really provided meaningful, impactful, and trustworthy services to a community. And again, I use the term frontline workers because that's what we are. And I think those services that we've been providing very intentionally during COVID and have been essential to each and every community, both psychologically, both emotionally, as I think Elise was alluding to, but also just the family unit, having this place to go to feel a safe environment for their families.
And Paul, I'll add to that I think that it offered us an opportunity to really build strong relationships with the families that were there. Because in times of crisis, when people pull together, those are times that stay with you forever. And there was such a level of gratitude back from the families that I've experienced that we wouldn't have had the opportunity to maybe have bonded in that way otherwise. So I think that was actually a good outcome from all of this for all of us. That one-on-one kind of I wouldn't even call it customer service, but that one-on-one partnership, that one-on-one love that you actually give to the families that keep them coming back. This really enabled us to build upon that trust, as Paul is saying.
But I think one thing you said is very important to remember. Everybody's level of comfort is different. And I think the services that we provided needed to have many different levels. And I know the JCCs that provided numerous, engagement opportunities were the more successful ones. So rolling out, whether it's a virtual option or a touchless option if needed, or an in-person for those that were able to do that and felt comfortable, was very important.
So I'm going to try to make a connection here. And if I'm way off, you can let me know. For those of you have access to the comments, you can let me know as well. I'm happy to hear it. Let's see what I got here. I'm thinking about and I'm hearing about the challenge of COVID and how it affected everybody, and policies and procedures that needed to come into place for the entire JCC, and what a challenge that is. And I also think back to my days at the different JCCs I worked at, and you've got a camp department and a youth department and a teen department, a marketing department, a sports department, all these different departments, and everybody wants to take ownership kind of the same kids or of the same program participants. But what if we flipped it and we almost treated it like COVID, where we tried to create something that was for everybody? For example, for those that have experienced the JCC Maccabi games, and you have the concept of Rahmanis, and of compassion, of not running up the score on your competitors. And what if that concept was then applied through every single department, and the kids that were in the multiple departments and in the multiple programs were hearing the same values and having that same lesson taught, but in the different environments, whether it's theater, whether it's sports, whether it's after school, whether it's camp or preschool. And so I think that what maybe previously was a huge challenge to sometimes work interdepartmentally might now be a huge opportunity to kind of connect some dots and have a greater impact on some kids and some teens and families.
Robbie, I
Robbie,
absolutely
oh,
agree.
go ahead, Chris.
No, I totally agree, because what's naturally occurred through this process is that it has forced the staff to adapt and to actually come closer together, because we do need to identify like where are the opportunities within this, the experiences that we can provide, the services that we can provide, and so on. And so being able to be, I'm talking to staff that previously I may never have had interactions with, to try to figure out how do we best engage the community, and I think provide stability to that community. It's one of the things that I have found working with both youth and teens this year is that the number of anchor experiences that they have lost out on over the course of the last 14 months, right? Whether that's going to summer camp and they can't because of COVID, or going to their high school graduation, or whatever it might be, they've lost that. And the JCC has provided that stability, but it's the coming together of that staff in this time that we have created that stability, right? This year I have barely worked with teens because I've been asked to help out with an all-day experience of helping kids connect to their virtual learning here at the JCC. And one of my jobs is I want to make sure I'm not letting down that staff person who asked me to help out, because the numbers and the need there is so great. And if I can make a smile on a kid walking in the door every morning, then I'm succeeding, because I know that they're having a challenging experience otherwise, of not being in school with their friends or doing the normal extracurricular activities that they're a part of. So it's definitely changed the scope of the work that we're doing, but it's also created so many new opportunities that I hope that we continue to explore as we move forward out of this.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. But before you chimed in, and I apologize that I cut you off earlier, I wanted to comment that, Robbie, you were not off base whatsoever. I think it's actually pulling us back to the main goal of this session, which is about creating that intentional programming between youth and teens. And in our early conversations, for everyone joining us today, know that there was kind of this idea of, is it youth? Is it teens? And the idea that it's one or the other was very an interesting thing to me. But in the JCC world, it seems like it's been kind of siloed in the past. And I love, Robbie, that you and Chris and Elise and Paul, all of you have brought forth this idea of a broader community. So instead of looking at the demographics as one thing versus another or another, it's really engaging the whole family and the whole lifespan of a member, so we don't lose them at pockets, and that we really get to know the families kind of as our own. Am I reading the room right?
Absolutely.
All right. So the question then, because it's not my soliloquy, what are the successful ways that we can engage youth through teens?
I'll jump in. I think one thing that's been really successful that I've seen, not only from my experience, but I'm looking at the names and I just see like we've got these all-star list of people here in this room, these participants. And so I've learned a lot from, people from Pittsburgh, from Baltimore, from Austin, Atlanta. And I think when you talk specifically about teens, it's having them guide their own types of programming. And this isn't something that is rocket science, right? I think that we as the professionals and those of us that are experienced and those of us that are maybe parents or work with parents of teens, we know the outcomes that we want to get. We know the best case scenarios, right? We want teens to feel like the JCC is a home. We want them to make friends. We want them to be resilient. We want them to strengthen their identity, but allowing them to have the creativity and the empowerment to plan how that's going to happen, I think is extremely important. And as you get younger, the adults have a more active role, of course, in creating that curriculum. But I've seen so many great examples, whether it's a JServe teen task force, whether it's a leadership group on a summer camp team, whether it's volunteer coaches in the sports environment, or even the older teens in a theater program, having a big brother, big sister little program, with little ones in the theater program. There's so many different ways that they are creative that we're not, and they know what they want, especially as they get older.
Anyone else before we move on?
Well, go ahead, Elisa.
Oh, no, I was just going to add, I think in order to keep the child from the beginning, you have to look at it like you're actually building a brand. And in order to grab someone early when brand building, you grab them young, and then they can grow with the brand over time. And then you make it aspirational. And so over time, you keep them hooked in. And I think that stepping back and looking at strategically, and from a marketing perspective as well, with heart, how can we do that? And then I think what we're going to lead into is also, how do we do that without silos within within the JCC? And I think back to what Robbie had said earlier, COVID enabled everyone to have a cohesive message between all our departments. We all needed to provide safety. We had a small amount of numbers we could use. We were looking at tiered programming for most people. And I think that created a cohesive message for all of us that I hope moving forward doesn't get lost in agencies such as like Chris, who has him in his position that is able to oversee all of the youth departments. So I just wanted to bring that out, and maybe that sparks some more conversation here.
I think that's well said. I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention our JCC Maccabi games, because that is such an important component to teen programming at most JCCs. And I'm proud to tell you, I'm very involved in the leadership of that. And we are currently going through a strategic planning initiative to really see what the games are going to look like in the future and to engage more of our teens as we move forward. And the question always is it a sports program? Is it a teen program? Is it an agency program? Is it a performing arts? And the truth is, it's everything. And it all comes together. And, I'll go back to how Chris laid out this session. I mean, I think that is a perfect example of how all of our agencies can really mold things together towards a common goal. And we're very much looking forward to our JCC Maccabi games getting back in action. Probably not this year, but hopefully next year, and in a model that may look a little bit different, but it's a tremendously impactful program for teens.
Thank you.
It's so interesting that you say the Maccabi games, because that's actually the one experience that propelled me at the Pittsburgh JCC to open up the dialogue with the other staff, because I was asked to come in to help with our delegation to get the numbers up. And I was like, this is making no sense that we have never talked about Maccabi in the 5 years I was in this position previously. Why is that the case? And so, right, because it's not just one thing, it is all of these things combined. It's just a meaningful, amazing experience for these teens to go through. For some, it is an athletic event. For others, it's just a social event. And then for others, it's making a difference or an impact in the local community, right? And so one of the things that I keep coming back to is we need to stay in the space of building relationships with our teens and with our youth, right? And one of the things that I've worked incredibly hard is through that process of Maccabi is I didn't know a lot of the middle schoolers, right? So I couldn't recruit for Maccabi or tell them because I didn't know who they were or who their parents were. So I was like, you know what? I need to identify a staff person that has those relationships that I can work with together so that I can build those relationships too. And then we can collectively work together to strengthen both of our program areas, but for the benefit of the teens, because they're ultimately the ones that are going to win in this, right? Because they're going to have those meaningful experiences. They're going to inform their identity. They become resilient. They're going to learn leadership, whatever it might be. But that is what propelled that conversation. And I couldn't agree with you more.
And so I quickly want to jump in here. I see a question in the chat. Someone asked, what is Maccabi? So for those of you unfamiliar with JCC Maccabi Games, which is, I believe, the formal title of it, we'll send out additional information after this call. But Paul, do you want to give us maybe a 60-second clip of what the JCC Maccabi Games are?
Well, the JCC Maccabi Games is an annual program that is put on in different communities each and every year. And what it does is it brings Jewish teenagers ages 12 through 16 together for under the umbrella of either sports or performing arts, but that's not really the purpose. It's creating Jewish memories and connections through this engagement opportunity. And it's a beautiful program. If the community hasn't been involved, I strongly encourage you to look into the opportunity, because it's bringing Jewish kids from throughout the world together to really make connections. And we look forward to getting that back in action. Like I said, probably next year you'll hear more about that.
Thank you, Paul. And for anyone who has not had the opportunity or pleasure to attend a JCC Maccabi Games, the next time they take place, I highly recommend you get in front of your executive director or CEO and make a plea to go, because you will not experience something like that very often in your life. So I want to get back to our topic at hand. We've talked a little bit now about the buzzword of collaboration, and clearly it's the ingredient to success. What are the challenges we're seeing to collaboration, either within the JCC or beyond our walls?
You know, I think collaboration is something that we're all a little bit afraid of. I think because we're all tasked with a responsibility. Robbie needs to build a camp. He needs to get campers in the door. Whereas like Diller Team Fellows might be a threat to Robbie's camper existence, right? So we are competing with each other for the same audience. If we stop looking at it as competition and look at it rather from the team's perspective of what is the benefit for them, what is the right experience for them, right? If we, in building a relationship with a teen and their family, we identify that camp is not a good fit, why are we trying to send that kid to camp? It's not going to set them up for success, right? Let's find an opportunity that's going to be a better fit for that teen or for that youth that will get more out of them and set them up for more success. Ultimately, I think collaboration is incredibly important, and it's something that I'm striving for in Pittsburgh, worked 2 years towards, and bringing every single professional that works with youth and teens together to have a conversation and get on the same page of why are we doing this? And collectively, we built a why statement, which is helping teens be the best version of themselves now and in the future. It has nothing to do with Jewish identity or being Jewish or community or anything like that. We just want teens to feel better today than they are yesterday and better tomorrow than they are today, right? But that is not without a lot of hard work and a lot of stepping on toes, because we all do have our program areas that we're responsible for. But I think if we share resources and we share knowledge, we will do better for the whole community. We will raise the bar for teen engagement and for youth engagement so that we can figure out ways to have a staff member be across departments, building relationships so that one experience transitions into another seamlessly, right? And that we're engaging the family along that journey as well, right? Like, I don't know what Robbie's engagement over the year looks like other than what he might be doing for camp, but how can we work with camp to build relationships with more teens and get the camp name out there and create camp experiences so the teens that aren't connected to camp right now see that as a pathway to their engagement. So I think collaboration is really important. I think we need to reduce the stigma of competition and say that these teens don't belong to any one department or one program. They are ours collectively in this community, and we are working on behalf of them. And so let's figure out how to do that best together.
Beautifully said.
I'll add two things, Chris. I think you said it great. And I have this memory of a JCC Association benchmarking study from maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago, that showed that when participants were in 2.3 programs or something like that, somewhere around that number, they're more likely to maintain their JCC membership for longer. And you just got to think logically that while that study might not be done, it's the same thing for youth and teens. If we can get them involved in more than 2 programs, of course, the likelihood is that they're going to stay, right? It's harder to quit a relationship than it is to quit a business. So you build those relationships. But to Chris's point about collaboration, I got to tell you, I think one of the most important collaborative relationships you can have is with your marketing department. And it is every single person in this room's responsibility to get your marketing department excited to attend your programs. That is a priority because they cannot market your program sitting in their office. Okay, now it's a little different remote with COVID, but when things get back to in person, you've got to get your marketing people to your programs, introduce them, tell the kids they're coming to take pictures, they want to meet you, they want to be in a video, give them a camp shirt, give them a whatever, make them feel part of the team, because you can have the greatest programs in the world, but if you're not marketing them effectively, you're not maximizing the impact you can have. And I follow a lot of JCC's pages on Facebook, and I see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'm just like, come on, we can do better than that. So if you leave with anything today from me, I want you to be friends with your marketing department and get them out there to your programs.
I would add too that collaboration and partnerships don't have to be just the internal mechanisms of your JCC. Reach out into the community. If something is being offered of high quality and the state of the art in your community, don't look at it as a threat. I would challenge everybody to say, hey, how do we bring that into our environment? How do we offer this program that maybe we weren't capable of offering ourselves, leaning on the expert in the field to see how that can best the families that we have relationships with. And I think sometimes we get very myopic that it's just the JCC and not looking beyond our walls. So I think that's an important factor as well. So don't lose sight of that, but also bring your marketing person to that as well. So Robbie will be happy.
Thank you. So clearly we could talk, ad nauseum about this topic. And for everyone on the call, please know the 90 minutes we have together are the start of the conversation. We hope that these sessions bring to mind more questions than answers, because we want you to be curious. We want you to engage deeply on these topics. And we're here just to catalyze that conversation for all of you. So before we wrap up our panel, I would like to ask each of you in 30 to 60 seconds, going back to the most important thing of why is it you do what you do? So Elise, kick us off. 30 to 60 seconds, go.
The reason why I do what I do is because my goal, my passion in life is to help children rise up to their personal greatness for wherever that is, for where they are in their life. And I use my opportunity at the J to help do that.
Paul?
To me, it's pretty clear. It's just to make a positive impact. And I get to do this on a day-to-day basis with whomever I work with at a JCC. And I think that just the ability and the fact that I'm able to do that, I really feel blessed to do what I do.
Robbie?
It's kids, teens, young adults, impact, smiles, pride. I think there's nothing more exciting for me and more rewarding than seeing a child, a teen, or a young adult accomplish something that they thought that they couldn't do. And I was a little part of that equation, either giving them some encouragement or help preparing them for something. And it's just truly rewarding for me. And that's why I always do what I do.
And Chris?
It's interesting. I never thought I would be a Jewish professional. As growing up, there was never a single ounce, but I'm a product of amazing Jewish experiences as a youth that really informed my Jewish identity and sense of being. And honestly, I love the work that I do because I could just be a positive role model in their life and support them in whatever way that looks like for them, and just build amazing relationships and connection, and create that impact. And I know that hopefully that will carry them on for many, many years after they're done being a youth and teen at the JCC.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Mel, what is yours? Let's throw it to you.
What's my why? Oh, now I'm on the spot. No, I would say, honestly, this is why I do what I do. I love working with JCC professionals because each of you are so passionate about what you do. My ability to engage with that passion and that commitment to community is beyond what I could have imagined a career could be. I get so much purpose and so much fulfillment out of being able to have these types of conversations where it's clear that we are making such an enormous impact in the lives of people across the continent, around the world, not just our communities, but our professionals in our ability to network and engage. Thank you for asking.
We appreciate what you're doing.
All right, so now we have, we're not gonna let you four off the hook quite yet, but I am gonna open it up to the room. So if anyone has questions, let's go ahead and maybe take us off the spotlight view so we can see all faces. Tracy, if you wouldn't mind de-spotlighting us. All right, great. So anyone have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat or feel free to say it out loud. And you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you do have a question. And this can be for any one of our panelists or for the room. Panel, I think we solved youth and team programming. We've got it. All right, well, you are going to have an opportunity to chat amongst yourselves. If you're feeling a little camera shy, to ask your question to this room of a robust 84 people, which I'm very proud of that number right now. So, okay. Why don't we go ahead and transition into our next segment? It is going to be some breakout rooms. Again, thank you so much to our panelists. I guess you are being let off the hook without any further questions. Today, it's likely generated more questions than answers for all of you. So we want to empower you to continue the conversation in breakout rooms. You'll now have about 25 minutes and be joined by about 5 or 6 of your colleagues. So when you arrive at that breakout room, chat amongst yourselves to assign someone as the note taker or who wants to be, I would say, group leader. And we would ask you to go around, introduce yourself. So who you are, what you do at your JCC, and what is it you do within youth and teen engagement, and maybe a fun fact. I always love to share those within a new room. And once you've gotten through the introductions, and we'll put all of these in the chat, so you don't need to take it down now. With your colleagues, please dialogue and create 3 to 5 recommendations you would have for best practices on creating collaborative and intentional programming for youth and teens. Think about what's been successful in your agency thus far, what's been challenging. And I would challenge you to think, yes, within the confines of the world of COVID, but also try to think beyond that. What is it going to look like when more community members are welcomed back into your spaces, if that's been a challenge for you? Further, how can you encourage collaboration within your JCC or beyond your JCC? I believe it was, I'm going to paraphrase this, but Sue Gelsey, our Chief Program Officer, today at our team meeting said something along the lines of, Mother Teresa said, you are great and I am great, and together we can create great things. So I want to ask you to think beyond our JCC as well. So Tracy, whenever you are ready, feel free to send us in, and you will have about 25 minutes. All right, welcome back, everyone. I hope your time together was helpful and engaging, and you got to flesh out some of the ideas that you've been chewing on. I'd love to open the floor to anyone who wants to share, 1 or 2 things that your group chatted about. So feel free to unmute yourself and dive in. Or if you want to raise your hand, we can see that in the participant list as well.
Hi, I'm
Hi,
Debbie
Debbie.
Lombard. How are you? I'm from David Pusnick JCC in Davie, and I was with a wonderful group of people. I was with Elise and Jackie, Nicole, and Ritam. I hope I'm saying it correctly. And guys, help me because I'm not the best note taker. But we talked about best ways to collaborate at the J. And there were many great ideas, but basically what we came up with, which was a 15-minute roundup once a week that everyone gets together and maybe rounds up in their lobbies or whatever. And they get 1 minute, kind of, I would call it like a 1-minute commercial, but that's not what we actually said, but a 1 minute to tell everybody what's going on in your department, or what you're up to for that week. And it could be everybody, who's there. And then also to do weekly department brainstormings, with your department heads and your program directors. And then there was a moment to come together as what is your creative message for the week, for everyone, or for the month? What is that creative message? There was a lot more that we also talked about, but there was also co-granting and co-partnerships to get visibility to support each other's departments so that we would use camp and theater as that is a way to work together, like a theater program along with the camp program, if you don't have a theater program during camp. And help me guys if I'm doing, then we talked about the teens in future leadership involvement and to meet with other professionals. That this way they could sit down and talk with other professionals in the community and let the teens, talk with them about their jobs. And then we touched on, and I hope I'm saying everything kind of, we talked about after school, theater, Pound Fitness, brainstorming sessions, and then Pound Fitness, which was great. And it was for preschool and distant learners, and the staff and everybody got together to do this. It's lifting like weights, and then someone came in and so I lost it. Okay. And then last we talked about our marketing challenges, and we didn't get too far with that, but basically, and I know I agreed with this one, time and priorities was the only problem. I love our marketing group. They're terrific and they are engaged. The problem is that right now they're focused on camp, childhood, early childhood and membership, and understandably why. So, okay. And I hope I filled in good for my group.
Thank you so much for sharing, Debbie.
Thank you.
Feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to share.
Hello. So I was in the group with Alana, Jesse, Alyssa, and Paul, and we talked about just working with other departments that help to provide a more full community experience, which is something that we're doing and starting to do at our JCC. I'm at the JCC in Milwaukee. And just looking out to see the other departments that do work with the same kids, instead of, having each of us reach out to families for something separate. We're going to reach out once and we're going to tell them all the things that we have going on for them. And they can find what works for their child, because they all have so many different interests and experiences and such like that. Somebody had said that they're kind of restructuring their programs so they all fall under the same leadership, so that way, again, it's not kind of in siloed little areas, but that they can work together, since again, they are kind of being overseen by one main person. It just helps kind of bring them together to work more together as a team versus individually. And another JCC was working with providing opportunities for teens to come into their JCC to get community service opportunities and to work within other programs in their building. So if they have adult programs running or special needs running, it's giving their older kids, the teens in high school, an opportunity to come in and get volunteer hours that are needed for school and things like that. So those were our main talking points. If I forgot something, Alana, Jesse, or Alyssa, if you want to chime in. But and like Debbie had said, at our JCC, we do get together with our teams and we say, like, these are the things that we have going on this week, and we work together to promote what everybody else is doing. So if I'm going to send an email to my families, I'm also going to say, check out what our special needs and inclusion department is doing with their kids. And by the way, because it's virtual, you have the opportunity to participate in it too. And they can watch the programming that they have for them on Sundays, or we can let them know what adult programming we have going on. Like we had a virtual wine tasting, like that I think reaches a lot of other people within our community besides our children and youth. It reaches the parents and the grandparents and the aunts and uncles. And so just being able to know what's going on around your building, your department, and the rest of the departments really helps to shed light on everything else that's going on.
Thank you so much. I think we have time for one more.
Hi, in my group, I'm Jess Marivici from Montreal. I'm the coordinator of the Diller Teen Fellows group out of the YMYWHA. And in our group, with Harry, Diana, Michael, and Sarah, we were mainly focused on some of the programs that we've been running, some of the challenges that we've had during this time, especially with youth and teens. And so one of the challenges that we've had was that we've been getting a lot of teens expressing the Zoom fatigue and that they're tired to be online and that, you know, they want to transition to in-person programming and be able to gather and be together and make connections in those ways. And we completely understand that and heard that. And now as we're opening up a little bit, the teens are also struggling a little bit to actually come to those events that are in person, because it does take more time and energy for them to be able to come and displace themselves from their home. So sometimes, you know, they might not want to do the Zoom thing. They might not want to do the in-person thing, but they still want to have meaningful connections and make those meaningful connections. So we have to still figure out how can we do that for them and how can we make that happen. Something that someone brought up in terms of really interesting programs that they have put forward. We're doing different activities in person, depending on your circumstance, but doing activities based off things that people love. And like kids these days love slime. And so doing a workshop based off slime, or, you know, making slime all together, that's like such a great idea because they just love that. And, you know, things like sports and doing like an outdoor, you know, game or all-star type of game, you know, and having people win points and have incentives to be a part of this. I think there's one incentive, like you could get a prize, but the other incentive is to really build connections and make friendships, which is always nice and what we're always aiming for. And then, you know, obviously food, we all love food, and doing activities based around food. And sometimes it's something that doesn't come out so clearly is like, you could do a challah bake and you could do a virtual challah bake, but I don't know if any of you have ever really baked challah outdoors and gotten together with people and bake challah in a park. I think, you know, some of these ideas are just so interesting. And I think it's so important to be able to be putting forward activities that are meaningful to the participants and finding ways to hear what your community needs and then putting that forward and doing so in those different ways. So yeah, thanks everyone for sharing. I really appreciate the conversation today.
Thank you, Jess. And thanks everyone who shared. Before we wrap up, we're just going to give everyone a couple moments of reflection. I'm going to drop a Google Doc into the chat and then share my screen so we can see it populating. Give me 2 seconds. I actually cannot share my screen. Anyway, you have this Google Drive. So what you'll be able to do is just ask yourself a few questions and take some notes. What are you taking away from the session? What questions have you come up or what questions have come up for you, and what challenges are you thinking about? And I encourage you to take just a few moments. All right, let's see if I can do it now. Sorry. Here we go. All right. Forgive the many tabs open. If you have it open and want to just start populating, I'll let everyone participate in this. You should be able to start writing down any ideas the session generated for you, what the session is creating.
I don't know if I'm the only one, but I needed to request edit access.
Sorry about that.
No worries. If you go on share and then like that blue share button, and then if you click on the change, and then you should be able to do it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Here.
Exactly. So now everyone, if you refresh your page, you should be able to edit.
Thank you so much, Jess. See, this is all learning for everyone right now, including myself. just take 1 or 2 minutes to hear back from you. And if you want to just do this on your own and keep these questions for a time that you've had to process what we've all discussed, please feel free to wait on answering these. I think it pushed to the next. Let's see if anyone's. So far, no concerns, just questions and ideas. And as you're thinking through, I just want to share some wrap up and announcements. So I want to thank our panelists again, and to everyone on this Zoom for your contribution and ideas on this evolving conversation. We really hope you're walking away feeling empowered to begin being the change agents in your own JCCs. And please know you have a community of peers to connect with and collaborate with moving forward. As we've discussed, it's not youth or teen, it's youth and teen. Our next peer community session will be held tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Zoom link is in the schedule on SpotMe, and we'll be joined by the Blue Dove Foundation to engage in mental wellness through a Jewish lens. So in addition to a reflection of our own mental wellness as JCC professionals, there will be an opportunity to brainstorm and share programming for effective mental wellness programs for youth and teens. So please check your agenda for more information. Also, a quick reminder that the virtual vendor hall will be open today from 4 to 5 p.m. and on Thursday, April 29th from 1:45 to 2:45 p.m. During these times, sponsors will be available for live, engaging and informative video breakouts or Zoom sessions, and you'll see the product demos and have opportunity to ask questions about how vendors' products and services can best help your JCC. If you have a trusted advisor session either this afternoon or on Thursday, you can go into your schedule and it will be under my personal schedule to find that session. You'll just be able to click on the link in the session in order to access your trusted advising session. And if you'd like information about future offerings about trusted advising, please feel free to indicate that in the chat and we'll circle back about future opportunities to speak with a senior JCC professional. And tonight we're offering our first ever continental wide service opportunity with JCC Cares in partnership with Repair the World. At 5:15 p.m., choose from one of 2 options to engage in service, including either Neighbor Network or Vax Volunteers. So for those not familiar with either of these, Neighbor Network is direct service. We'll be connecting with seniors who are experiencing unprecedented isolation as we pre-screen them for local services and programs for ongoing conversations. Or alternatively, you can help Vax Volunteers update their site with vaccine volunteer opportunities. So both sessions do involve learning, practice, and reflection. And before our peer community session tomorrow, connect with your colleagues and kick off your day with Mindful Motivator at 12 p.m. Log on it's a quick 15 minutes to set your intentions for the day and prepare to bring your whole self to a full day at ProCon. After our very brief welcome, really 1 to 2 minutes, you'll be able to choose from one of several mindfulness opportunity breakouts, including meditation, movement, and goal setting. And then you'll spend about 10 or 11 minutes doing just that, and it'll launch you in for a successful second day at ProCon or a day at your JCC. That session is sponsored by Les Mills. And with that, we thank you so much for joining us and hope that you enjoyed this session. And we look forward to seeing you at the rest of ProCon. So have a great rest of your day.